of that technical problems. We have an ability on the World Urban Parks Academy to collect continuing education credits. So this slide and a slide that I'll bring up at the end has the link for where you can submit in for those. There will be some skill testing questions at the end of the webinar when you go to submit this. So listen up, pay attention, and you may have to answer about 5 questions to be able to do complete the CEU. And then, oops, we'll stick to that one for later. So today our webinar topic is around play innovation in an urban setting, and we're excited that we have 2 speakers who are going to be joining us today. We're looking today at the benefits and objectives of creating play events by turning streets into parks for short periods of time. We're looking at being able to describe the success and impacts of legacy open streets in Toronto's pop-up parks and school streets. We want to be able to look at the methodology behind the neighborhood play project and what was discovered in the journey, and then discover the importance of safe access and wayfinding through urban neighborhoods for children and for their parents. And then finally, to define the impact of parental fear and that lack of trust that we're seeing around children being able to roam and play in their neighborhoods with their siblings and with their friends. So I am excited to be able to introduce, as the co-chair of the Child, Nature and Play committee, I have the bios for our 2 speakers that are here today. So our first speaker is Amanda O'Rourke. She is the executive director of the 880 Cities. Amanda, that is a nonprofit organization based in Toronto, Canada. She was a key architect of the 880 concept and has been an integral driving force in the development and the growth of the organization over the past 12 years. She's worked on numerous local and international projects that put people at the center of the planning and design and the management of public spaces. And so we're really excited to have Amanda be the first speaker this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are. Our second is Hanna Moser. He's the program manager at the Nature Play program. Most of the children in his generation spent their leisure time outside, and so it came as no surprise to his family when he chose a career in outdoor education. For 10 years, he's been involved in devising, facilitating, teaching, and leading young people through world-class outdoor education programs, using adventure and nature to teach children vital life skills. He's passionate about nature play and believes that Nature Play program is a positive and practical way to ensure children participate in unstructured play in nature, delivering the myriad of benefits that this type of play offers their physical and emotional health. So we will hand this over. I will unshare my screen. Like I said, if you have any questions going through the process of this, please put the questions in the chat box on the side. Please make sure that if you are getting feedback, to make sure that you mute yourself. So at this time, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to try and remember. So I will welcome Amanda to start her presentation.
Sorry, Julie, I was just muted, as you said. Hi, everyone. I am super excited to be speaking with you all today. Can you all see my screen fine? Julie, I imagine you would tell me if it's okay.
We can see it great.
You're still seeing it?
Not now.
Okay. Maybe if Hanna could go first, that would be great. There is something happening with my computer, and I apologize, but if Hanna, you're ready, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'll say sure. Let's see if I can get this to work as well. All right. Here we are. Should work, I think. You guys can see that?
Yes, we can.
I've skipped a couple of slides. So. All right, you should see a guy looking through a set of binoculars. Everyone's got that? No.
Yes, you're all good.
Yes, Hanna.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Good to go, Hanna.
Well, thanks for inviting me to be part of this this forum. This is a new experience for me. I'll try not to be dazzled by the technology and get through this talk. And my name's Hanna. I work for Nature Play Queensland. We're a not-for-profit organisation that advocates for kids' outdoor play. And our mission is to get more kids outside playing more often and to revitalise an outdoor childhood. I'm here to share with you a story of a project that we ran across 2018 over pretty much a 12-month period. I sought to explore. It started out as a research project just to see what was going on in neighbourhoods for children, and it turned out to be a community development process on how can we support children to have a neighbourhood again. So we went on and set ourselves a mission to see if we could find people willing to go with us on a journey to see if we could activate their neighbourhoods as a place for kids to play. I suppose we started out with the assumption that we would find that kids weren't outside playing. And indeed, that's what we did find. But we focused for the majority of the time on one particular neighbourhood. It's a suburban area in Queensland, Australia, called Caboolture. And we found, so I'm going to share with you their story today about what's going on for kids and a little bit about what's going on for their health and well-being as well. As what stuff we found. So just quickly, childhood is more than just a place. Childhood is more than just a stage of days. It's more than a stage of development. And it's more than just a piece of time, passage of time. It also happens within a space and a place, and that place, for the majority of a child's life, is their neighbourhood. For most of us, we probably remember neighbourhoods full of children, roaming streets, and green areas and spaces and places with lots of kids to connect with, and done most of the time without any adult supervision at all. And we got up to all sorts of amazing adventures, all sorts of mischief, and we learned amazing things. We learned to get along and have fun, and we also learned what it felt like when we heard each other. We learned what it was like to connect with our places and spaces. We developed empathy. We developed care and concern for each other. We developed deep relationships with each other. We developed deep connections with our communities. Not all of that's positive, but all of it's learning. So for myself, my childhood was spent a lot of the time outdoors. And I've had the, I suppose, the privilege of reflecting a lot on my childhood. And I suppose I'll just share one quick neighbourhood childhood memory with you at 8 years of age. By the way, the little guy you see in the middle with the shiny blonde hair, not one with a yellow t-shirt, with no t-shirt, that's me. when I was, I think, 6, 5. At that age, I was going to the shop, which was about 3 kilometres away, with a note from my mother to buy her cigarettes, on my own, by the way. So yeah, anyway, and that neighbourhood story, about 3 years on from that photo, I was 8 years of age, and I managed to convince 10 kids in my neighbourhood to lay down on the ground and let me jump them on my bike. So that was that didn't just happen straight away. I had to convince them that I was actually worthy of doing that. They knew that I had a pretty decent reputation as a good jumper on my bike. And so I was able to sort of take them on a journey, and we all got part of this journey of breaking this neighbourhood record of jumping children on my bike. So yeah, that's a fun story. And I still feel like today, I'm still taking people on a journey and convincing them to come along with me. So yeah, I'll share that little anecdote with you. And yeah, anyway, a quick little bit of research in Australia. This study, I'm just going to fly through this stuff to make sure we get to the guts of this. Only 8% of kids in Australia, according to this study, play outside every day. 30% of children involved in this study, it was done over 2 weeks, didn't play out at all. Just to sort of highlight the difference in cultural, how childhood has changed. This is also Australian research done about the difference in generations. Our generation, my generation, 73% of our generation played outside more than inside. Now it's only 13%, so that's a 60% cultural shift in the way kids are playing. So this research looked at children's independent movement, and Australia actually came last in that piece of research, out of looking at about 30 different countries. Australian children had the least amount of independent movement. America was second last, and I was surprised to see who was actually one of the top ones. Japan have higher degree of children moving around the place. So it's obviously there's something going on there culturally, as well as infrastructurally. And in Australia also, we have 1 in 5 children who are only physically fit and healthy. And the average 11 and 12-year-old in Australia sits for 11 hours a day. So yeah, we've got this big problem going on, unfolding as a result of childhood retreating indoors. And 1/3 of Australian kids, as a result of that, have developed an issue with obesity and overweight. And social isolation is a growing problem. And we just had a piece of research come out that said 50% of young people in Australia feel lonely 3 to 4 times a day. So this is what, for most children, their streets look like now. They're empty, they're boring, and there's no kids to play with. So how do we end up looking like this? Yeah. So as I said, we set ourselves this goal in 2017 to see if we could find anyone willing to actually be interested in this. Did people care about the changes to neighbourhoods? Did people care that kids aren't connecting? And we didn't know where to start. So we held forum. Yeah, so I'll just make sure that's not blocking your view. There we go. So to tell you up front, this is a sad story. It's a hopeful story. It's a story of hope and inspiration and revival and renewal. It's a story of adventure, exploration, superhuman feats of strength and agility, as well as ordinary goodness, kindness and caring, just being a good neighbour. So when we start, we held this forum. We did lots of consulting with the community. We talked to many community groups. We organised a forum of people to come along to tell us what was going on for their concern about their community, say in this community. So, and then we had a secret agenda up our sleeve. We wanted to see if we could find parents who were willing to go with us on this journey and activate their neighbourhood. So at the end of that forum night, we had 45 people from the community show up, which was amazing. And they told us everything that they were concerned about. Strangers, needles in parks, a child attempted to being abducted from a local supermarket, no places to play, the differences in their childhood, the fact that they were worried about their kids, their health and their well-being, how the social anxiety was growing for them, and they didn't feel like they could reach out. So this was for them, for some of the people in their room, they were really looking, hoping for solutions. And we were lucky we came across these guys. They shared lots of amazing insights with us. So we had 16 of the people in the room asked to be a part of this project. We were pretty honoured by that. And we selected 2 that were very different communities. And as you can see, these in Australia, we don't have a problem with green space. We just got lots of it around. We picked 2 different communities, one that was really established, the top one on the left, and they lived on quarter-acre blocks, and the one down the bottom was a brand new estate being built with really small, pretty much next to no backyard, green spaces down. Had their own sets of challenges. You know, the one down the bottom, the new estate, it was in a very low socioeconomic area. The one up the top was a middle class area with a pretty high level of education and a high level of income, discretionary income, low rental area. The one down the bottom, this new estate had high rental area, low income, below standard education level for the community. Anyway, this is Tracy. She was from the Greenfell estate. It was called Riverbank, and that's her family. She was part, and her kids. Little James, he was the central character, and then you had Marissa and her family, and Mela and Zayden were the main people involved. So we conducted entry interviews with both of the parents, and then we decided to get to know their neighbourhood and organise a play street event or play park event and invite all their neighbourhood kids that we could find to come along and be a part and see if we can get to know them. So we did that. We walked the streets with these guys. We saw no children out at all. We did look for signs of children while we're going around. So little Mela had her invitations and we walked around these streets and looked for signs of children, like trampolines, bikes, swings, shoes at the front door. In Mailer's street and Mailer's neighbourhood, it was quite easy to find signs of children. In James's neighbourhood, it was a different story. He found it really frustrating and couldn't find any signs of children at all, really. It's no obvious ones. Like there's no obvious signs of play was happening in this neighbourhood. James ended up resulting to looking in car windows for children's car seats. That's how he was able to identify if there was children living in those houses, and he would drop them an invitation to his play event. So we held those play events, and they were really successful. Actually, we were really surprised. We were really overwhelmed that lots of people came out. We had at least 13 to 15 families, about between 20 and 30 children in each one. And at these events, we recruited families to be part of a 4-week journey to come with us and get to know their neighbourhood. So kids, that's what we did. So in that time, we made up this plan with the community. We wanted to get them to know each other, how to find each other, place to place. So they would go from one child's house to the next child's house, and then we would also go and explore their neighbourhood, look at all their green spaces, their parks. So just geographically orientating these kids towards their neighbourhood. So some of these kids had never didn't know where to find any other little, childhood friends, and they didn't know how to connect with each other. And they didn't know their neighbourhood at all. And so after we got to know each other, we got on bikes and we explored the neighbourhood. I just quickly divert a little bit. We also were seeing all these common themes coming up around what the parents were telling us during these interviews, during the forums, about why they don't let their kids out, what was their issues, what they were concerned about. So we decided to test these at a larger scale. So we drove across Brisbane, across many suburbs, and we interviewed it was over 100 people, I think it was, including children, and asked them what they were doing and and also asked if their kids can play outside, and all of our themes were confirmed. We found no children playing outside except those the two little kids in the middle there. Those two were the only two we found outside playing at all during the entire trip around the neighbourhood. We ended up going to a city park where we knew we'd find heaps of kids, and asked them, because we just couldn't find any kids in the neighbourhood. We knocked on a lot of doors around neighbourhoods, and we found signs of children and asked a lot of the parents about what's going on, and we just found that kids were all indoors and most of the time playing with screens. And there was a concern for their kids, but the resounding reason was that people didn't trust each other, and they had this fear, and distrust was widespread, and that erosion of trust in each other was the reason that we didn't let our kids out. So everyone everyone we don't know is perceived as a threat and a danger. That was the dominant theme. Anyway, back to our plan. So we went around, we had lots of fun with these kids, back to our neighbourhoods. We explored their neighbourhoods. We went out and had a blast on bikes, hanging off swing trees, climbing trees, exploring deep green spaces, getting to know their neighbourhoods on a different way. And you know what, the kids, they got it really quick. Their intrinsic motivation for their neighbourhoods was pretty much instantaneous. They loved it. You could probably see there's a photo in the middle there. That's little Mailer and Kaya showing us how to cross the road. Interestingly, they didn't, before they crossed the road, we were talking about how old you need to be to cross the road. And Maya said you had to be 13 on your own. Sorry, Maya said you had to be 13, and Kaya said you had to be 17. And then they showed us how to cross the road. Yeah, so we had a lot of great times exploring the neighbourhood, and like I said, the kids got to know it on an experiential level, and they got to know each other more. They played with danger, they played risk, and they explored all their parks and their green spaces. And they formed the beginnings of a new story in the neighbourhood. And I like using this word story because it's a way of us, I think, being able to reframe what the current story is for a majority of children. So in what we found anyway. So, and it was not based off secondhand information. This was based on their real life experiences, their real-time experiences. They formed this new story, and it meant that the opportunities for continuing their involvement was high. And for the parents, the story was great as well for them. For the grown-ups, they were connecting and bonding and talking. Their local play champions were forming. They had now created a whole set of existing communication channels to continue their journey, and they are continuing. And they have now a deeper understanding of the barriers that kids are facing, and they have a shared language around the importance of neighbourhood play now. So that was really fantastic. We also spoke to a whole bunch of professionals just to make sure we weren't just going off on tangents. So we talked to sociologists, paediatricians, urban planners, local counsellors, community development researchers, parenting experts. Yeah, so that was, and they shared with their opinions. So the neighbourhood play, we also did a survey. We had along the way, we had 240 responses, and we asked them all these questions. Where did you play as a child? Can you know, children play in the neighbourhood? Is it important to you that your children have a neighbourhood to play in? And what are the barriers? So we found out in the end that there was the reasons why kids weren't connecting with their neighbourhoods, because this was literally a research project. We just had to tack on the community development part of it as we went, and which was pretty fun, by the way. Two fundamental human behaviours, and that's fear and distrust. Yeah, the complete erosion of trust across the neighbourhoods. We don't see people we don't know as people that we can rely on for help. We actually think they are there to hurt us at any given time. That's the dominant story that we found came up. And that, yeah, nobody is trustworthy, which is funny because I'm pretty sure everybody thinks they're trustworthy. So the current neighbourhood play narrative that's unfolding in Queensland, Australia, and I could pretty confidently say that this is most of it for the majority. I'd say this is a dominant story for most Australian children. The majority of the time is banned indoors. They're banned from neighbourhoods. They're inactive, low social. They spend their leisure time with screens, and interestingly, they're forming online neighbourhoods. So we discovered that kids are going using games like Minecraft and Fortnite and a few of those things. They're going off on amazing adventures with groups of people, having these incredible superpowers and being able to do superhuman things. Now, but that's all done inside. But this is exactly what I did as a child in my neighbourhood with my neighbourhood friends. So yeah, it's all gone online, that childhood experience. And for Queensland, the majority of, for outdoor play, it's the minority now, it's not the norm. It only endures under conscious effort. So somebody has to make sure it's happening. It endures under certain conditions. There needs to be, infrastructure-wise, it has to be a cul-de-sac or lots of traffic coming or really quick access to a park. Yeah, there has to be a play champion in that area. There has to be someone willing to champion it. These are the conditions that is sort of certain conditions that these endures under. And it's outsourced to grown-ups now. Most of the time, kids don't go outside unless there's a grown-up there. But it's also under constant threat. We need one incident to happen in Queensland around outdoor play, someone getting hurt, and yeah, people will quickly retreat back inside. Any gains we make could easily disappear. It's pretty tentative at the moment. And it's also seen as a competitor activity. There's a whole industry being built up around it, around children's playtime. And yeah, outdoor play doesn't have too much of a marketing budget. So the neighbourhood story now. Fear and distrust is a cultural problem for all Australians. Society, it's a nationwide cultural problem. And the tasks of addressing it, they do seem insurmountable when you look at it as a massive cultural problem. But what we learned, and this is the good news, is that the solution is simple, it's easy, and it's right next door. All you have to do is go and start knocking on your neighbours' doors and getting to know them. That's it. And start having conversations with your local neighbours, and trust will erode. I've seen it happen. I'm doing it in my neighbourhood. We have a thriving neighbourhood of children who play out all the time. It's taken about 3 years now until kids are now independently roaming all around our neighbourhood now. Yeah, so it's possible. Yeah. We took all this learning, by the way, and we made it into a documentary. You can go and watch it on Vimeo. It's free, and it's been watched in 39 countries now. which is great. And it's actually quite a good, heartwarming documentary, a little bit entertaining, a bit funny. We try to make it interesting. We also introduce, I'd just like to introduce you now to like this, what I call the neighborhood play capital. It's a little bit like social capital, but this is place-based. It's so these are things in your area from an infrastructure perspective. There's the people, places, things, infrastructure, hard infrastructure, and soft infrastructure. That's when I say infrastructure. So that hard infrastructure is that built stuff. The soft infrastructure is the facilitated connection between neighbours. And the whole idea is to become redundant. But at the start, I think people need a little bit of encouragement outside. Having these community development processes that, like we offered, was a positive in connecting those people. So yeah, I think that soft infrastructure and under certain conditions is necessary. Not in all conditions, but yeah, in some, it's just necessary. And there's lots of stuff that's happening across the globe that's really inspiring, we can learn from in that area. So children look up, out and through into the world, just finishing up now. And so what are they seeing when they look up, out and through into the world? Is this going to be the story? Will this continue as their dominant story for children? And what will be the impact of this for these children and for adults and for society? Or will it look like this? Did this become their dominant story? And what will this mean for society as a whole if this becomes their dominant story? Yeah, and we made this, also conducted, all of our research has been put into a project, a research report. I can share that with anyone. If anybody wants it, it's free and available. And also we made a whole bunch of resources that are on our website that are also free and available if you want to do things in your neighborhoods, invitations and action plans. And just to give you a sneak peek, hasn't been released yet, but on the 9th of December, we're putting an app together that connects local children for local play. It's called the Digital Door Knock app, and kids have a play signal that they can turn on, and it puts a radius around you. So any kid in that area whose parents have that app can turn on their play signal and chat and connect for play, and let you know who's available for play. And it doesn't replace face-to-face connection. It's not an easy, this is an amplifier. So anyone who's looking and willing to make the efforts to make neighbourhood play happen in the area, this will be a great supporting tool for them. But it's not something that you can do from a distance. You can't get the app and then look and find everyone in your neighbourhood. You actually have to go and meet face to face, and there's a QR code that you scan and share, and then that connects you. And that way we start to build trust with people. We start to connect people through a face-to-face experience and a direct connection, both physically and digitally. So, yeah. So that's launching on the 9th of December. And lastly, your neighbourhood needs you. That's it. We went way over time, as I always do. So I apologise if I did. That's me.
Thank you, Hanna. Amanda, are you ready to head up?
Totally ready. Thank you, Hanna, for saving the day. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So if you can stop screen share, then I can start.
Oh, stop screen share. There we go. I'm muting now.
Wonderful. Okay, so I think I figured it out. I hope that everyone can hear me and see that slide. I'm going to assume that's a yes. So my name is Amanda O'Rourke, and I am the Executive Director of 880 Cities. Thank you again, Hanna, for going first. I think that was a wonderful setup. I'm going to talk about open streets as a way to also encourage outdoor free play. So let's get started. So 880 Cities is a nonprofit organization, just to give you some context. We are based in Toronto, Canada, but we work internationally, and our mission is to improve the quality of life for people in cities, no matter their age, ability, or socioeconomic status. We've been working over the last 12 years in over 350 cities on 5 continents, getting people to think about the role of their streets and public spaces. And we start always with a very simple, but we think powerful question. And that is, what if everything we did in our cities was great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old? We believe that is a really great starting point to opening up a broader conversation about how we create cities that work better for everyone. Over the last 80 years, we've been planning our cities thinking a lot more about the movement of cars than on the health and happiness of people. We know that this has had a disproportionately negative effect on children and older adults and economically marginalized populations. So the way that we actually achieve our mission is by bringing people together to transform mobility and public space. And our work is really focused on these 3 fundamental rights. And we think these are integral to creating more healthy, equitable, and human-centered cities. The right to mobility, the right to public space, and the right to participate in city building. Cannot talk about our organization without, of course, talking about Gil Pealosa, who is the founder of our organization. Gil started his city building career in Bogota, Colombia in the late 1990s. He, along with many others, led a really impressive transformation of that city by focusing on investing in public transit, bike paths and sidewalks, parks, and of course, the 70-mile ciclovia, or open streets, which is what I'm going to be talking about today, not just Bogota's, but how it inspired basically an international movement for open spaces for people of all ages. What really is in kind of the DNA of our organization and, you know, our beginnings in Bogota was this idea that public space transformation could be a driver for social equity and quality of life outcomes. That is what sort of Gil brought when he later immigrated to Canada and started 880 Cities, was really very much rooted in this experience in Bogota. And of course, a very important reminder, streets are a fantastic opportunity. They are our largest public spaces in our cities often. They're about 75% on average of public space in cities. Of course, that differs depending on the city that you're living in. And often they're around 25% of the land in North American cities. So we think that streets are a fantastic opportunity to create more opportunities for play and mobility, human-centered mobility. So it all began in Bogota for the Bogota Ciclovia. Gil, as I said, was Parks and Recreation Commissioner at the time, and his inspiration was actually Central Park. He had recently gotten the job as Parks Commissioner, had no experience doing anything parks related, and went to New York to learn about their park system. And he was so inspired by Central Park. He thought it was such an amazing, fantastic civic asset that brought people from all different walks of life into this public space. And when Gil later went back to Bogota, he was like, how could I do this? You know, Bogota is not a wealthy city. How could I ever create a Central Park in Bogota? And he really started to look at, what about our streets, this existing civic assets? Our streets could be our Bogota Central Park. And that's what inspired him to expand the Ciclovia to what is now 75 miles. And it happens every Sunday. The streets are open to people and closed to cars for them to connect some of the wealthiest neighborhoods with some of the poorest neighborhoods. And people come out and do all different kinds of activities. Cycling is one of them. Walking is by far the #1 But can you imagine being able to create any kind of play space where you got 1.3 million people out every Sunday being physically active and connecting with one another? It's been a tremendous success. This is the map of how it connects huge swaths of the city from north to south, east to west. And it connects the sort of old historical center, the newer neighborhoods, and communities of extreme wealth and extreme poverty. This was, in Gil's mind, he wanted to create a sense of social belonging in the city of Bogota. And now it has become a staple. Many people have met and fell in love on the Bogota Ciclovia. It's part of the sort of city's DNA. And of course, it is one of the best places for children to come out and play, and actually kids of all ages, and even the kids that are older. So this has spurred a worldwide movement in many different cities. So it is from Paris to Santiago to Cape Town and Gurgaon, India, as well as Guadalajara, Mexico. There are what we think is about 130 different Open Streets programs around the world, but it actually is really hard to keep count, so we don't even know if that's an accurate number. But it's spreading like a positive virus around the world, and we've been really excited to see that happen. So just as a sort of backup, what exactly are open streets? As I mentioned, you open the street to people, close them to cars. The whole idea is for free recreational programs. They're low cost because you're using an existing civic asset. They have complementary programming. They connect diverse communities, and they're really for all ages and all abilities. So this whole idea is that our streets are not converted to public spaces. Streets are of course already public space, but this allows people to use them in a different way than sort of just moving cars from A to B. People can walk, run, bike, rollerblade, skateboard. We've even seen crab walking. Basically anything that floats your boat you can do on an open street. And it is really a way to improve people's health, meet neighbors, and interact with one another. People get to experience their streets in a whole new way. The streets get transformed from infrastructure, not just hard infrastructure, but the social infrastructure that I think Hanna was talking about as well. We really see it as a wonderful way for people to connect with one another. Complementary programming is one of the aspects of open streets. So Bogota Ciclovia has very sophisticated programming. Guadalajara, Mexico is also another one that has very sophisticated programming. But we've also seen open streets happen in much smaller cities with very simple programming. But the whole idea is to make it irresistible for people to come out again. And I think this really builds off of what Hanna was saying, is we kind of have to make public spaces even more enticing to bring people back into them. So complementary programming is very cool to see different cities sort of adapting different ways. Some focus a bit on music, but it's really important to note that this is not a street festival. It's very different. Open streets are programs, not events, and their impact is biggest when you actually think beyond just one-off events, which tend to be more sort of festival-like. Open streets are purely about physical activity, social connection, and really creating a giant pop-up park. Consider more of Gil's inspiration like a giant pop-up park in the middle of the city. So some of the really fun activities we've seen also is Zumba, yoga, dance, basically anything that really attracts all ages, all abilities, all backgrounds. Rather than separating us, streets start to connect us and connect diverse neighborhoods across the city, driving more social integration. And it really provides an opportunity for residents to meet as equals. They really cost kind of pennies on the dollar for the impact that they're able to have. Imagine, for many of you maybe who are in charge of parks and recreation departments, think of the return on investment for doing in open streets versus creating a new park or a new recreation center. These are fantastic ways, quick wins to actually improve mental, physical health and play, of course, for people of all ages. And as people in Cape Town really describe it, is that open streets are pure magic as people connect. I love that headline. But what makes open streets different? I love this picture. This is actually Gil's favorite picture of open streets, which I thought was hilarious because, you know, of all the pictures that he has, this kind of is an insight to his sense of humor. What makes it different from other streets events is, you know, open streets do not have start or finish lines. So oftentimes when we're working with municipalities in launching programs, they're very used to closing down the street for marathons or doing very specific events. So open streets don't have that. They're not a hard close. We call them soft closures. So as I mentioned, people traffic basically replaces car traffic. So the street lights still operate and people obey the traffic signals. You have people at the intersections managing that. Usually it's volunteers, and at major intersections you may have a police presence. Again, it's very different for different contexts, and we have very specific resources that I'll talk about later if you're interested in knowing some of those key logistical considerations if you want to start one of your open streets. The benefits of open streets is really about social integration, improving public health. It's also been proven with a lot of research to be good for local businesses. It really kind of opens people's minds and opens up their imaginations about what our streets can be. And for us, I think it's really about reclaiming the city for people who have not always had the opportunity to enjoy the streets like they want to. As I mentioned, we've been very happy to be able to assist about 20 different open streets around the world, whether it's launching one, planning, or evaluating. We've been sort of on the front lines of this. We also have an open streets toolkit that we created. This is a great picture from Guadalajara, Mexico, that has a fantastic program which was modeled very much on Bogota's Ciclovia. So I'm putting these slides in here just to show you, and I won't go into this today because so much of it is completely available open source online on how do you get started if you wanted to create an open street. There's some considerations around route planning. We have some suggestions on terms of like the size of the route for the community, how frequent, when, but of course this is really very much driven by the local community, and we've been really excited to see how each community kind of has a different take on open streets. We've seen open streets as far as sort of Sudbury and Thunder Bay in Canada, in small communities in massive cities like Bogota, so it really is something that can be easily replicated around the world. So I want to end sort of just by talking about our experience with open streets in Toronto. So we're based here in Toronto, and of course, one of the things that we wanted to do is bring this wonderful program to our home city. So we have a lot of experience, not just advising cities, but being sort of on the ground, operationalizing one here. This is some of the media coverage. We've been in our 6th year now, and of course, this has been a significant sort of process of educating diverse stakeholders, city officials, police, and this is all outlined in the toolkit on what exactly open streets is and why we should do it. Toronto has embraced it considerably, and we're excited to see that happen. This was actually recent, in the last 2 years, our Parks and Recreation Department in Toronto, it's basically run by a nonprofit organization called Open Streets TO, but working very closely with the city to get the permissions to do the program and to help program it. We've worked with the local Parks and Recreation Department on creating a 5,000 square foot pop-up park, like actual sod, on our Open Streets program. It's in one of the most iconic streets and intersections in our city. And this is just fantastic to see. It really starts to get people thinking about this underutilized, I would say, public space in our cities, overutilized by one particular way, but underutilized by people. So the park's not only been a focal point for some wonderful programming like yoga in the middle of Yonge and Bloor Street, which is basically the busiest intersection in the city. It also allowed the Parks Department to also do some engagement with the community. And it's, you know, play innovation for people of all ages. So children are coming out to play in this park, as well as kids that are of all ages. So, you know, even the older adults are kids at heart too. So, I mean, in terms of what happens on an open street, it's kind of anything you want. Some, in Toronto, it's been an opportunity to spark a broader conversation about cycling. It has really, people bring out some of their own equipment or even pop up small play equipment that are sometimes sponsored privately or brought out by community centers. You know, it's a great opportunity to bring play back, but also introduce a little bit of edge. This was a nice, fun sort of, what are those called? Obstacle courses for cyclists. As I said, some of the big kids got on there too. It wasn't just for the little kids, the adults were enjoying it too. And it was, you know, this is right at an intersection, you know, adding a little bit of spice to our intersections. And of course, people of all ages doing simple activities, something as simple as line dancing, and playing with a volleyball. The beauty of open streets is that it's so flexible and that people can come out and enjoy it in the way that they see fit. One of the more beautiful stories that I hear every year that we do open streets is people with accessibility needs often say that this is the one, or you know, the one time in their year in their city that they can really feel free on the streets and explore the city. And I just think that that's so powerful. I'm going to end with my sort of two favorite picks of open streets Toronto. It's very 880. I think one of the beautiful things about open streets is also these small, intimate moments that let someone feel connected to their streets for the very first time. It's a kinds of experience that shift perspectives on what a city is. It's how we move sort of beyond a more car-centric mindset and build community support for walkable neighborhoods and more people-centered neighborhoods. When we provide space for people like this little boy to feel as powerful as Superman on their streets, I think that we're really starting to make a statement. So from the young Superman to this, I love this picture, this gentleman just feeling so inspired to sit down in the middle of the street and have his cup of coffee and donut. And I think that's really the true power of open streets. It's a simple idea with really big benefits. One last thing that I did want to talk about, that's really all I wanted to say about open streets. One thing that we just recently did in the City of Toronto as well was our first pop-up school streets. For those who are not familiar with school streets, this is a completely different program than open streets, but in the same vein as sort of reclaiming our streets for play. We worked with the city to do a demonstration of a school street, which is a pioneer program that's been modeled in many European cities, where you temporarily close the street immediately in front of the school during peak drop-off and pickup times as an opportunity to improve safety and well-being for the children and their caregivers and parents walking to school, but also as an opportunity for more play and interaction on the street. So this was the first school street in Toronto. We were just introducing this concept. We did this October, so this is really fresh. And I just wanted to share this because it was such a simple idea with simple barricades, as you can see here, simple signage, a few volunteers, and we closed the street in front of the school so that it encouraged more children and their parents and caregivers to feel more comfortable and safe outside of the school when there was a lot of chaos and traffic. So we did, for the launch of the event, we rolled out the red carpet for children, saying, you know, this space can also be for kids prioritizing their safety. And we also brought in some pop-up loose parts play for the launch. But the beauty of school streets is that you really don't need a lot. You just have opportunity for kids to be kids in front of the school. That is it for me, and this is a picture of open streets with my 3 kids who are very happy that that we've created this program. They have rave reviews for being able to explore their city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. If you can unshare your screen, I'll put up the CEU pieces again. So we do have, I don't know if that actually made it to the last slide for you guys. So that should be the link for everyone. We do have a couple of questions if people have the time to stay. I will start with the very first question we have posed here, and I think it's for, I would guess it's for either of you. How did you find your local play champions?
As Hanna, we just walked the streets actually and just advertised, and they came. The play champions were it's just a word for a concerned parent who wants to take action. That's all it is. Yeah, actually, some of the play champions were children in the end. Yeah, for us, it was. We found them by, I walked the streets and put flyers in people's mailboxes, and they came to that forum. That's how we found them.
Perfect. Amanda, I have a really specific question for you. For the School Streets program, did you face any barriers where it was problematic for those with mobility issues?
Yeah, great question. So part of the School Streets program is there's always exemptions made in terms of the model. For this pop-up that we did, anybody with accessibility needs, there was still access granted through a school parking lot that it was around the corner of where you saw those pictures. So that is an integral question to ask at the beginning of planning any sort of school street, is to make sure that there is accessibility requirements for anybody who would need to do that. So for our pop-up, it was very simple. For others, it is as simple as an exemption. So in European cities, you have like the Blue Badge program. So people are able to enter into the zone if they have a special exemption. Similarly, if there are, and this wasn't the case in this pop-up, the first pilot school, we didn't have any personal driveways, but for school streets where it's on a residential street that has personal driveways, you create also exemptions for that. So that's all things that can be worked through with some planning at the outset with a stakeholder group. We have a school streets guidebook that outlines, we just actually launched it a day ago, and it's available on our website if you're interested in finding out more.
Perfect. And I'm going to guess this one is also for both, that for low socioeconomic areas, are there ways that we can get volunteers or local play champions? Had either of you found successes? I think Hanna, yours was a bit more in sort of middle class neighborhoods, but have you seen further success in Queensland?
Both. We had 2 neighbourhoods. One was low socioeconomic and one was middle class. And we actually found that the parents that were concerned, those and became the local play champions, were probably more motivated than those in the middle class area. I don't know if that's just a personality thing, or it seemed to be that they were motivated by the fact that in that particular estate, that the chips were stacked against them, so they're motivated by defiance, if that makes any sense. So the fact that they were almost expected to not succeed was the motivator, because they had a lot more barriers and challenges. But that sort of seemed to make them more focused, make Tracy anyway, and and a few of the other parents more willing and determined to make sure it happened for their children, because yeah, that was. But I think I found that the attitudes from in the other areas were a little bit more relaxed and just expecting it to happen. There wasn't a deal of urgency or a feel like this couldn't happen in the middle class area. Whereas as opposed to the low socioeconomic area, it sort of almost had that expectation that they might fail. So yeah, it wasn't a problem finding the local play champions. The level of motivation of the play champions was quite varied. Yeah.
Okay.
I would just add that Open Streets has been proven really successful in communities of all different types of demographics, and I think one of the strengths of really good Open Streets is usually connecting diverse neighborhoods, as I mentioned in the presentation. I would say that in general, for any public space projects that we're working on, we've had really really fantastic success in working in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, but it's really essential, especially when you are an outsider, to do a lot of that groundwork and working with local trusted community partners. And for very good reason, many of these communities do not have trust in local government and outsiders. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of building up those relationships and adequately also sort of providing reciprocity for what it is that you're bringing to the community, whether it's an Open Streets program, whether it's a school streets, and providing that support so that local champions sort of can be the champions themselves. Like we're not sort of zooming in and swooping in and taking over, but providing opportunities for that capacity building from the ground up.
Excellent. There's a lot of interest in your school streets programs, Amanda. So I think you mentioned earlier that your toolkit is available, and that there is a question with regards to not license, a permit for closing the streets. Was that did you receive those permits then?
Yes, great questions. You know, it's so funny. I just got off previous to this webinar about the school streets pop-up, and we were with our colleagues in London who have done this program in a much more comprehensive way. But yes, for us to do the pop-up, we got an event permit. It was a simple, I mean, we're very good at doing that because we're used to doing that through Open Streets. So it was a simple, much simpler event permit done on a residential street. So we worked with the permitting department to do that. In the School Streets Guidebook, we have a sample of what that looks like. For community organizations, I would say one thing for us, you know, we're working with the city to see if we can try to streamline that process. A lot of time for event permits, you need liability insurance, so that could be a barrier for communities wanting to organize that. But that's something that can be solved. We've seen that happen with the Play Street model, which is something we didn't talk about here, but is another way of sort of transforming the street, not immediately in front of the schools, but in front of neighborhood streets. So they've had success in creating a more streamlined process where the city actually is more of a facilitator rather than a regulator in these cases.
Excellent. And I have one last question. Again, Amanda, what was the feedback that you received from the kids in the community after you launched the School Streets program last month?
Oh, such a great question. They were so excited. The kids' faces were like so gratifying, just to see them see the street in a completely new way. And we saw, you know, also I think a real shift in attitudes with the parents and caregivers who were often standing dumbfounded in the middle of this street, like, huh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And the kids were, you know, very happy to kind of start their day off with a much more sort of calm, convivial spirit than sort of being shoved out the door from the car. So it was a really, you know, we only did the pop-up for 4 days, but it was you know, pretty astounding from my point of view how simple and easy it was to execute, and how quickly behavior shifts. So the first day we had cars parked in the car-free zone, even though they weren't supposed to be there. But after day one with some hiccups, day 2, 3, 4, everybody had gotten it and was completely following the rules. And the kids were actively involved in, there was an eco club at the school. They were actively involved in collecting the data, and actually also speaking to media about what their experience was like.
Wonderful. Well, great. So Hanna has given the link to the documentary, and for everyone who was either a speaker or one of the ones that proposed the questions today, thank you so much for today, and thank you for staying an extra 10 minutes so we could have some of that great discussion at the end. The World Urban Parks, if you're interested, this webinar, it was recorded, and so we will be posting it in time. So you're more than welcome, if you thought it was great, that you can share it with some of your colleagues and peers going forward. Thank you again to both Amanda and Hanna for providing us with some wonderful inspirational thoughts today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great to be able to share a story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie, and all.
Right.
Thanks, Julie. Did a great job.
You're most welcome.
We
Thanks,
did
Jen,
it.
for making sure no technology went wrong in the background.
We did it. All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, sounds great.
See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Have a great day. Have a great night. Bye.